What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Non-Standard Podcast. I'm your host, Manny Lamson, and as always, thank you for joining on another episode. We're only just getting started. Today, I'm honored to talk with a long-time friend, Efren Del Rio, who I've known since 2000. That's right, 2000. We were in high school together. I've admired his journey throughout life. He is a role model of mine in all aspects. A couple of things we talk about, just to hit him up really quick, is being a father, raising kids, sports, business. He has done an amazing job in his business career and progression. He talks about that in the episode. It's just great to just be able to have these opportunities to reach out to people I haven't talked to in a long time and just get them on a show and let them tell their stories so y'all can hear that. Everything's non-standard to be successful, and you have to be able to take those risks and those opportunities. So that being said, thank you and enjoy the episode, and let me know if you have any feedback after. What is up, everybody? It's time for another non-standard episode. I'm Manny. Just like you heard in the intro, I got my main man, Renskis, from back in the day, and I'm pretty sure we'll bring up some flashbacks of that. But we're just going to jump straight into it because we were already talking. We were already getting the juices flowing. Let's get this going. As most people know, we start with the 3 H's. Here are hometown, heroes, hardships. Let's go. Let's hear it.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on. First of all, Manny, my main man, hometown, Gridley, California, population 7,000.
It's grown since we were there.
Yeah. I just looked it up. 7,227 people, I believe, is the current population. And we met our freshman year in high school. That's when you came to, my hometown. And from kindergarten until graduating, high school, I had that concept of that town. There was only one elementary school, one middle school, one high school, and so I was fortunate to have a lot of friends that just kind of we all stayed together from kindergarten through senior year and in Gridley, and so that's the hometown in Northern California. And then as far as my 2 heroes, Greg Martin, he was my AAU basketball coach when I was like a middle schooler. And then he became like a mentor for me and just kind of life business related and everything else under the sun. And so I met him when I was in 7th grade. And then my other hero, I would say, is Damon Whitaker, who was, our high school basketball coach. And, I met him when I was a freshman in high school. And, to this very day, we have a great relationship. I named one of my sons, his middle name is Damon after him. And so, I would say Greg Martin and Damon Whitaker are my 2 heroes. And then the hardship, this is something I'd be happy to get into because I love talking about my son, Jude Damon Del Rio. We lost my son in 2018 when he was 8 months young from a heart defect. And so, that's definitely my hardship, and we miss him every single day. It's been a little over 6 years now that we've been without him, and so that's my hardship. And I don't know about learning a lot from it, but definitely it increased the faith of my wife and I, and just saying, hey, this is God's plan, and let's be strong for our other 2 sons. We've got another son named Camden, and then Jude was a twin, and so his twin brother Jackson, that's those are 2 sons that are here, and so that'd be my hardship. And so yeah, man, those are my 3 H's to kind of get started. A lot of this, given that we're close friends, but yeah, those are my 3 H's, man.
Nice. Well, I'm going to dive back into our days because there weren't many people I grew up with, and still to this day, that have passion, drive, just a work ethic like nobody I've ever met, man. Like, I don't know. I want to know, like, where'd you get it from, man? Because we came from a small town. Like, there wasn't. I get goosebumps talking about it because, dude, you still do it, man. Like, if there was a book on just developing ethics and hard work, and like, dude, you got it. So, like, where'd that drive come from?
My mom, 100%. And so my mom, single parent of 5. And so I'm one of 5. I've got 3 older brothers and I've got a younger sister, and the age gap is huge. My oldest brother, he's about 18 years older than me. and then it's 17 years older than me, and then it's 10 years older than me, and then my little sister is 3 years younger than me. And my mom was, she was a part of three different relationships. And so we don't really, we don't consider ourselves like, stepbrothers or whatever it may be, half brothers. Like they're just my brothers, and that's my sister. And so my mom had to raise all five of us essentially by herself. And so the work ethic, I mean, the fact that she, you know, we played football, and this is just kind of like something that I think about, and I think it's like gross now looking back on it. Like we'd get our football gear, dirty, or even like basketball, like it's all sweaty stuff, and I just throw it on the ground next to the laundry machine at our house, and then the next day, magically, it's cleaned, ready to go for practice the next day. But then I didn't think about it as a kid. My mom, she worked a full-time job, and then she also had a second job with being a notary public, and so she was registered to do that. She would help notarize papers for a Spanish-speaking population that needed help with multiple sorts of documentation. And so at a young age, I got experience as like a receptionist, because they would just ring their doorbell at our house, and then voila, here's a couple that say, hey, we're here to meet with Yolanda. Like, okay, take a seat right here. Can I get you some water? I put on some novelas so that they could watch something on TV. And then off I saw my mom working after she'd had her full-time job, and she was most likely at our sporting events.
Yeah,
And
I
then
remember her at a lot of your events, man. Like just, yeah.
yeah, and then she would cook, clean,
Mhm.
laundry, iron. And and so looking back on it now, it blows my mind, but I feel like that's why I am the way I am. It's because she just went. And yeah, I feel like not having a father. So when I was 3 years old, that's when my biological father decided to leave our lives. And my little sister, was still in my mom's belly, and so for me, it was just like, as I got older and I realized, man, that was just such a cowardly decision. Like, I'm never going to be that for sure. But then I would also just think about, okay, well, what should I be like? Because I'm a man, and that's my mom, and my little sister's, she's grown up to be like a replica of my mom. But like, who am I going to be? Who am I going to look up to? And yeah, my brothers, they're older than me, but they're my brothers. And so it's just like, who are some dads? And they also had no father. And so who else am I going to look up to? And so, whether it's your dad and kind of what he did and picking apart the things I love about him, or some other dads, I'd be like, man, I really like what that person does, what this person does. I don't really like what that person does, but I do like a little bit of this. And so I feel like I put that all together to be the person that I have always wanted to be. And so, yeah, man, I would say that that's kind of at the core of it. And then I feel like at a pretty young age, I realized that, athletics, can be an outlet to get to where I want to get to. And at a young age, I was like, man, I could play in the NBA or whatever it may be. And then, but as I got a little bit older and towards high school, I was like, man, the college basketball is a real possibility here, or college football is a real possibility here. And then I think that just kind of expanded my horizons. And then it made me just listening to people, hey, you really should focus on your grades if you do want to play at that level, and just actually doing it and trying my best to get my grades up. So I would say that, it definitely starts off with my mom, and my brothers were awesome. My little sister and I were best friends. And so my mom, just the way that she loved us, we weren't rich by any means, but she always says that we were rich in love. And it's very like, she just loves all five of us the same. And so I feel like there's really that is kind of what made me who I am. And then when I became an adult at 18, and I was out of my mom's house, and it's like, oh wow, like this is real. Now I'm here. Like now, like this is it. So I would say that that's kind of what instilled that work ethic.
Man, there's a lot of things you brought up. I I love and I appreciated the small town vibe, because like I have a dad. I'm really close to my dad. I still had father figures going through high school that I mentored from. Javi's dad. Coach Cox. Coach Crabtree. Like even though I had a very close dad, that vibe of having the same coach for every sport, man, dude, it's you don't get that anymore. Um, and that was one benefit I saw growing up in a small town that I don't realize until I get on calls and I talk about leadership and people ask me like, hey, did you know you had this early on? And, you talked about it before where we were talking about going to the high school gym, like I, I credit a lot of that to now because like my dad, woke us up every morning. He'd pick up me and Garrett on the way to the football room for workouts, and I don't remember missing a lot of workouts. I was pretty consistent there. Um, but then, but I also credit the small community we had.
Yep.
It was so cool just to start basketball season or football season for the school year, transition to basketball, and then transition to baseball. And you're with the same guys the whole time. Like you're throwing passes, we're catching passes together, man. We're running routes. And then basketball, we were hit and miss, me and you, but we were still there. We were doing what we got to do. But then baseball came, you're catching, I'm in the outfield. We're on a lineup together. Summer comes around, we're doing whatever we got to do during the summer, and we're back at it again. And so when you were talking about the dad aspects and pulling from them, I still remember pulling a lot from Coach Javi, and Coach Crabtree and Coach Cox, and even my dad, and gathering all that together. There's something about that small town living that, it helps people thrive a little bit more. And then you also talked about, which I've talked about before, having those aspirations to shoot for the stars, right?
Yep.
I think now you probably see it a little bit more in younger generation of the pros, but people don't realize when we grew up and where you didn't have recruiting tapes to go to college. You didn't have clips of your highlight reels like you do on YouTube now. You didn't have the communication with the colleges. We didn't even have colleges to go to really watch the college kids. We had Chico State, which didn't have a football team. We had Butte, which I don't even think a lot of us went to because it was so small. So for all of us, the NBA or just college sports overall was shooting for the stars. I never thought I could play college sports being in Gridley. And my senior year, like having a broken thumb and doing stuff like that. Baseball was an opportunity, but I was like, I don't even know where to go. Like, how do I even do this? Like, I don't even know, like, how did you learn about going to college for basketball? So you went to Humboldt State, you played basketball there. How, what was that process like? Because we didn't have the tools we have now.
Yeah. Well, I, growing up in a small town and like you said, all of those seasons, like I am so thankful that was our experience. And because my wife, she grew up in Orange County and like she had to make a decision like late middle school-ish, like what's your one sport going to be? And that's kind of like the consensus at like bigger schools than, kind of the schools that are surrounding us. And so I want to say it was around seventh grade, like sixth, seventh grade. As a sixth grade, there was no sixth grade basketball team. There was a seventh and there was an eighth. And I made the seventh grade team. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And at that moment, I was like, man, I'm playing up a little bit. Does that mean like I'm pretty good? And then from there, it was just, I loved just playing sports and being out. And, one of the things that, there was gangs, there were sureños and norteños that, you could go that route or you can find like a healthier route. And then I realized that, I wasn't smart, like book smart. I feel like, I'm definitely street smart, but not book smart. And, I was like, it may have to be athletic, so let's kind of pour into what it may be. And then I wrestled in sixth grade as well, and I hated it. And like it was after the first meet, it was all sweaty. Like you wait for hours. Like one match may be done, and then you got to wait like 3 hours, and you're there all day. And I'm like, this is lame. No, like I just don't. It wasn't for me. But one thing I did not do is quit. Like I rode out the entire season, but as soon as the season was over with, I was so happy to just give back my uniform and the earmuffs or whatever it may be. Like, thank you, never wrestling again. And so, I would say that like something just clicked with me in middle school to say, hey, this could be a real thing. And then from there, I would practice, but I thought I was good because of like the community that we were in, and just,
Yeah.
3 small towns, Gridley, Live Oak, Biggs. But then you bring in some people from Chico, they're like, man, they're a little bit better. But then all of a sudden, I got exposed to like Los Angeles and going to like a camp at um, Dominguez Hills, Cal State Dominguez Hills. It's the West Coast All-Star Camp held by the Pump Brothers. It was like a really big deal where they would fly in people all over the place, and so they'd pay the fee for some of the best players like in the nation. And my eyes like just opened up so much to where it's like I am not good at all. Like I don't know like what is like, and so my dreams at that point were like, man, like yeah, I don't think it's going to be the NBA. Let's hope that it's a junior college at that point or whatever it may be. And so I was just that was a really good reality check for me to be able to get exposure to the best competition in the nation. And so yeah, from there I would say between practice and I still like in looking back on it, I could have practiced even more. And my diet, God bless my mom. I mean, the meals were amazing. There was a whole lot of like Wesson oil and just like heavy stuff that I look back on now and I'm like, man, it was delicious, but I don't know how much how much bigger or leaner I could have been with all the delicious food that I had. But yeah, man, I would say that was kind of the experience as far as seeing the future.
Did you ever think about doing one sport, or were you like what made that decision? Because you could have focused on basketball and Gridley and did that. You were still very good, but I don't know, was there ever that talk? I just saw you play all the sports, and I didn't look at it back then, but
No. So I didn't know any better. Like I didn't know any different. I loved. I mean, I love football more than I love basketball. Like but I just so happened to have received a basketball scholarship. But and then also baseball. I enjoyed that sport. Like if I was in a position like in playing catcher where it was just like I was involved in something that was pretty regular. When they'd stick me in the outfield, I'd be like, all right, I'm engaged. And then like there's some downtime or whatever it may be. And then if you remember, I think you may have been a part of this. The track and field coach would ask
yep,
us baseball
yeah,
players to come and
yeah.
get
We'd go
points.
run after like a game or a practice. I remember doing a 200-yard run like after a practice because Brent McDonald was with us, and he was really fast, and I got smoked. I was like, I don't even know what to do. Like I just remember but yeah.
Yeah, and so to give the listeners a history, like our track and field coach would say, hey, head baseball coach, can we have some of your athletes to come and get third place, fourth place? Like we get points collectively for our team. They don't need to get coming first. And so when I went and raced, I just so happened to be really good at the 400. I wasn't a sprinter, I wasn't a long distance runner, but if for one lap, if I need to give it my all, I was pretty good at that. And so and then I tried the high jump. I was not good at the high jump, and and then the 4x4 is kind of something that we had some success in, but I enjoyed it. And so for me, I love sports in general. And then when I got to college, I did statistics for volleyball. I did the PA announcing for our softball team to earn some extra money in college. And so, I mean, anything sports related. I love golf. I play tennis, So yeah, for me, it was never, and no one ever, like, not even my brothers were like, hey, man, you should really focus in on this. And then looking back on it now and kind of seeing some of the sports related injuries from the repetition, whether it's baseball or any other sports, I feel like it's good to give those muscles, some breaks from time to time.
Yeah, I've definitely, yeah, I agree with that. I've seen it. And so moving to Texas, right? Texas is just huge on sports. So we're in a dilemma with our kids now. And I'll ask you this question after. So our kids do play multiple sports here. And, there's athletes out there that have made it very far. I think J.J. Watt is one of the biggest for playing multiple sports that talks about it at his level. But Texas, it's hard because there are 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds that are on specific teams year round, and that's all they play. So I, as a parent, usually feel sad or sometimes nervous for my kid to go for soccer season where he just got him a baseball and he's on a team with traveling kids that have been playing soccer all year long, and he's not the best, and he's struggling there. And then he he goes and plays basketball. But what we've seen, and my wife was very similar to your wife. She only played soccer her whole life. Her dad always made her play soccer. She went to college and played soccer, got wore out her freshman year, and didn't play anymore. And so we sort of have the same connection, like, and so every year we're sort of like, do we make that call? But we've kept leaning towards the more sports, because my son, for how stubborn he is, does pretty well when he's not the best on the team.
Mm-hmm.
And so we like that, where he loves the competition. He loves the struggle, because we've seen him on teams where he's like the oldest in the YMCA league, and he sort of slacks off. He gets like lackadaisical. He's not pushed. JoJo, on the other hand, is a little bit smaller, and she feels sometimes a little intimidated, but she's a beast. She loves practice and training, and so she's got that. So with your kids and your boys, what have you seen? As far as the sports and
Yeah, well, and again, like, I think this goes back to me being fatherless. Like, I've always wanted to be a father, and so I'm so happy, just like I'm living my dream every single day and being a husband and a father. My philosophy, and with my boys, and they're 8 and 6 right now. The 6-year-old's about to be 7 in a couple of weeks, but has been fun. And like, I don't care what sport it is, I want you to have fun doing it. And so we've got like plastic golf club sets with like plastic wiffle balls. We've got, tennis rackets for them to use, soccer balls, volleyballs, a kickball. My wife and I were part of a competitive kickball team in the Bay Area when we were, early in our marriage. And so we got like a Waka kickball. Basketballs, obviously, footballs. But I just want them to have an understanding of the fundamentals of every single sport and the rules of every single sport. And then I feel that when they play at recess, and this is kind of coming to fruition right now, they will kind of find what they want to do. And I mean, my wife's 5'10", she played college basketball. So the odds are in our favor that, both of our sons will be able to at least compete to get playing time. And so my vision is like, if they can step onto the court or the field and be a contributor, then it's going to be on them, like on taking it to the next level. Because I have so many people here, if they want to get better at baseball, then we got Javi that I can. If they want to get better at basketball, I got a guy named Marlon that I can send them on over to. Like, there's all these different people that I could say, so that they hear a different voice. But when they work with me, and then we got like a ladder as well for their agility and their footwork, I just want them to enjoy the game that they're playing. And so I don't really, right now, at the ages that they are, I don't really worry too much about them keeping up with them at this level. I feel like once they get into middle school, if they really want it, they'll tell me, and then by that point it'll be like, all right, man, like we've had enough conversations by this point to where you understand it takes practice. And our 6-year-old now, and he hasn't been dribbling with his left hand really. He's loving basketball. We see him out there all the time. It's very nostalgic for me to see my son now, after like my mom had a concrete slab in our backyard, and we had a basketball hoop when I was growing up. And so like, for me, it was very therapeutic, and it still is to this very day, just shoot hoops. And so I see my son out there, I'm like, all right, he's doing this, and he's not dribbling with his left hand. And so I just think back to what I did when I was a kid, and there was this church near my mom's house that I would dribble around all the time, and I would just dribble with my left hand. And so now, given kind of where we live and what's around us, I'm like, hey, you dribble up, to your friend Audrey's house up there with your left hand, and then you dribble back with your left hand. And all you do is, the first time you could walk it, the next time you can jog it, and the last time you can sprint it. And I'll say it, and then if he takes it, great. If he doesn't, we'll just keep playing a game and do whatever they want to do. And so I feel like I've seen enough like examples, and through social media, there's just so many different people that are saying that there's people that start in middle school. There's people that come in from other countries that didn't pick up a basketball until 15, 16 years old, and then all of a sudden, that they're in the NBA. And so I feel like at that middle school age, if they want to kick it into overdrive, they'll be great. But I really do want the foundation to be fun and competition. And both my sons, they don't like losing, and so I love that about about them. They're both competitive. And then what we do right now, and we've done this for like since they were little boys, is we break and after every single time. And sometimes, like, if they lose, like, this is earlier, like, we've worked on this, they won't want to break at the end, and it's very simple, and it's kind of silly what we say: good game, Del Rio boys, thank you officials. and then we just break it, so, and that's it. And that's all we do. But there's times where one of our sons will go, no, I ain't doing that. I'm out of here. And I'm like, hey, sportsmanship, and I kind of try to summarize sportsmanship, and then they'll say, hey, you're not getting dessert because you didn't break, like we've talked about. You want me to play, with you guys, then we've got to break at the end, and you've got to be just as good of a loser as you are a winner, and rubbing it in when they win and talking about, hey, that you're not going to want to do that kind of stuff. So those are the things that I'm working on more than I am like the fundamentals, the skill development. It's just kind of fun, discipline, sportsmanship, listening to your coach. Marlon, who I mentioned before, he was my AAU coach. He's worked with my sons in our front yard when there's his teams are in town to play, and my son was just dribbling a ball or like kind of shuffling it around in his hands when Marlon was talking, and it's just like, hey, hold the ball, and then they can tell my tone, being a dad, and then we'll talk about it afterwards, like, hey, it's respect, and I want you to do this with your PE teacher at school and anybody else. It's a form of respect, and so those are the things that I feel like are transferable, and once they get to middle school, they'll hear other voices and other people, and then they'll be able to advance their skills at that time.
Yeah, I do something similar with my kids. I always have them shake their coach's hands after a game, and it's pretty funny. I'll see JoJo now do it. Like, she'll finish a game, and I'll see her like run around. I'm like, I'm right here, and she's going to find her coach to say thank you, coach. And Connor, has done it, and so that's sort of like our thing is like, and I'll tell them, I'm like, hey, did you shake their hands? That's sort of like the end of it, right, where they can like cut it off, forget what happened after they shake the hand to say thank you.
Love
but
that.
I'll ask you this: do you coach your kids, or what's your philosophy on that? I'll give you mine, but what?
You want to hear mine first, or you want to go first?
You go first.
All right. So I've also been, without a father, I've seen some of those dynamics not go well,
Yeah.
and so I've always been kind of just like, what do I want to do? I'd rather just be a supportive dad and be in the outfield and just not say anything. And so right now, our sons have only played one organized sport, and that's our oldest. He played fall baseball last fall, and fortunately, the head coach, his son was on the team, and he loved baseball. He was a great coach, but there was about 4 or 5 dads that volunteered to help out as well. So it made it easy for me to say, hey, like, I'm out.
Yeah.
Like if he would have been by himself, I would have been like, hey, how can I help out? But I'm not a baseball guy, and like as far as like how I know basketball, and I feel like how I know, football, I'm definitely not like that with baseball. And so I would basically just do the raking, shag balls if at practice if they needed an extra hand. And I was just in the outfield and just a supportive dad. And that's the one and only sport our boys have played. And it's mainly because we've established like we made a little rule in our house, basically to buy my wife and I some time to just enjoy being like just them being young, playing with Legos, doing stuff like that before the craziness of sports comes. Because if they want to do it, it's a healthy outlet. I believe it's going to, but your weekends are gone, your evenings are at practice, and then you're rushing to make a dinner, and then we're exhausted by the end of the night. So we've just been prolonging this, but it's going to happen. Like this upcoming fall will be both kids. Our youngest Jackson is going to want to play basketball, and our oldest wants to try soccer out. So those are going to be the 2 sports, and so no multiple sports at one time. That's one thing that we're going to start off with. And then as far as coaching them goes, I do want to coach them in basketball.
Yeah.
And then also football as well, and tackle football. I feel like it's going to be something I'm going to hold off on until they're about 12 years old. I think I started football when I was about 11, 11, 12. And so I feel like that's a good age if they want to do it. I feel like I'd be, I feel like I'd be a hypocrite if I said no, like that's just kind of my philosophy. There's a lot of research that goes into tackle football and the impact, but I just know that the relationships, like, you and I, and just, and Friday Night Lights, and just the joy that we had when we would win games, and then, the agony of defeat when we would lose a heartbreaking game. But, like it takes 11 people to all be on the same page. Like it's a beautiful sport. So I feel like I'll prolong that. So we'll do some flag football if they want to do that before then, and I would coach their flag football team as well. And so I believe it's dependent on the situation. I feel like I would be doing a disservice to, my son and the other kids that are his age that are playing around here for, let's just say it's rec basketball. It's not like a travel squad. It's just anybody who signs up can play. That I've done it before. I've coached fourth grade boys and girls all the way on up to college men's and women's teams, and so I feel like it's beneficial for me, for my son, for the other kids, and I would just have to really monitor my relationship with my sons when that comes around. And so I feel like I'm neutral. I could go both ways. I wouldn't want to be the head baseball coach because I feel like I'd be doing a disservice to the kids, unless there was absolutely nobody else, and they're like, we need somebody, I'll do it. But yeah, I feel like that's kind of where I lie with coaching my kids.
Nice. Yeah, that's pretty similar to me. So like I grew up, my dad never coaching me, right? Because we just had really good coaches, right? We had the Crabtrees and the Solisas and then making their way through. So my dad never felt like he had to coach, so I never had that relationship, which was, I think, good, right? Because we'd come home, I say debrief now in that word, but talk about the football game, what he saw and watch film. My wife, on the other end, had her dad coach her whole life. Very tough relationship, like, and so we had both sides there. And so I don't like to coach my kids unless it's like there's no coach, or if I know the coach isn't going to do a good job, I will try to jump in there and help out.
Yeah.
But I do get pride in coaching my kids, so I love it. It's not that I don't like it. I love to coach. Just like you, I've coached other teams, in the military. I've coached intramural teams. I've coached Little League teams. I've coached college rugby teams. I just love coaching too, so there's that side of it. Tara will probably always coach Connor at soccer because she loves soccer. And she's a good coach too. It's not like she's just coaching to coach her son. Like, she's a really good coach. Like, all the parents come up to her and ask her, like, are you doing this again? We went to, okay, so cool. I like doing it, but then I don't because when I'm in the stands, I'm super quiet.
Yeah.
I'd never say anything. My wife is the exact opposite. She's the coach. She's the mom coach. And so I'm always just chilling, or I'm reading a book, or I'm doing my rucks or walks. So I'm either all in or I'm all out. So far I've coached, let's see, Connor in YMCA basketball because my wife just signed me up because there wasn't a coach and I liked it. Let's see, I've coached his baseball. I did JoJo's. Like, they do a little basketball league. I've done that one. But I look at the time when I don't want to coach him, and that's going to be, I probably won't coach as much in middle school, but in high school, if there's an opportunity, because I know there's so much room for development, I would love to get back in the high school football world. Texas is a lot different because they do have some pretty good coaches, and it's just so serious. Mm-hmm. But if there was a coach, I would love to. But I also really love coaching basketball.
Yeah,
basketball is a sport I've transitioned to. I really love. I love the tempo of basketball as a coach and a player. The movement. There's always something to do. There's not as many coaches, and so that if I were to dive into a sport and coach my son on basketball, I just really love it. The skills, the movement. It's fun. I like that. So that's probably the one I'll always move with him. Football, I'll sort of sit back, and bide my time. Baseball, like you said, it's tough because it's so positional and it's just different when it comes to that. But I usually pick and choose my battles, unless my wife's like, "Hey, I signed you up for this league. You're coaching." I'm like, "Okay, cool."
Yeah.
But I don't do the group me's or anything. I'm pretty strict. I've just established that role as a coach. My son knows it too, which is great. But then there's always that fine line of because there are those relationships where the dad, and there are a lot of pro athletes that have come out and said it, hey, my dad and I have a tough relationship because he was always my coach,
Yep.
But I've seen it work really great. I look at Javi and his dad, man, his dad coached him in everything, and Coach Solis was not an easy coach. He was super strict, but their relationship is phenomenal. So there's that, and even Coach Crabtree, and Coach Smallwood, right? I see them with their kids right now going through Gridley, and they were coaches and they had a great relationship. So, I see that and I'm like, man, that is still pretty cool.
Yeah. And I mean, it really is just the self-awareness of kind of where you're at, who the kids are, their ceiling I mean, there's so many layers to coaching, and that's where it's just like with the game of basketball and the levels of it, and just like I think it's a beautiful game as well. And my wife played college basketball, and like if it wasn't for the game of basketball, like I would have never met my wife. We would have never had our family. So, and the first movie that my wife and I ever watched together was Love and Basketball. Like, I mean, so I got such an appreciation for the game, and the things when you say when you talked about being strict, I would, if I was a coaching my son's team, and I would have a meeting with the parents before the season even
Mhm.
kicked off and just talk about the expectations and respecting the game. And it doesn't matter which sport it is, like respecting the game and not cheating the game. I mean, there's so many things, and that's where I feel like as you know, my kids do get into competitive basketball specifically, like, hey, don't cheat the game. You treat the game well, you put it in the time, it's going to, you know, um, reward you tenfold. And so, yeah, I feel like I've heard plenty of success stories with coaching your kids. I've seen some bad, and so that's where I feel like it's dependent on it's circumstantial, and I would lean, after speaking with enough people, I would lean more towards coaching your kids with the ones that you feel most comfortable with, and then being an assistant coach and or being like an involved parent, like for the non stuff. Like I don't know if I could be a head football coach for one of my boys. That's a pretty big time commitment. Let's just say it's
It's a lot,
middle
yeah.
school Pop Warner. There's a lot to that, but I would want to be involved just to make sure that the hitting drills, like I get to see how they're hitting, and because I mean it is so important that, and there's such an emphasis on that technique. Whereas, I mean, when we were growing up, I mean, Harry the Hound, there was Bull in the Ring, there was a lot of drills that we did when we were kids, and the coaches didn't really know, that wasn't a big emphasis at that time. Um, like what's good for the kids, what's good for the brains, at what ages you should be doing this, at what ages you should be doing that. And then now I see them, they have the little pads
Yeah.
over the top of their helmets to even, that impact is even less. And so I think I think tackle football is in the best spot that it can be at right now, safety wise. And obviously, you played in the Pac-12, Pac-10 now, maybe Pac-8. We'll see what keeps happening with that conference. But I mean, that's big time football, and I mean, there's just so much beauty to that game as well. So yeah, I would say that's kind of where I stand with coaching kids.
All right, let's talk about Efren's career because it's not standard. I try to follow along with your endeavors, and you did not go into a normal 9 to 5 job, where you're doing that. You've started some things, you've moved on to some things. So, what inspired that? What inspired the shift from a normal? Like I compare normal to sort of like what my dad working at Les Schwab. Clock in, clock out, work 10 to 20 years. But where'd that come from?
Well, so I initially thought after I graduated college, I thought I wanted to coach college basketball, and so I was a graduate assistant, and I was, working as a barista at a local coffee shop in the morning, go to basketball practice, in the middle of the day, do grad school at night, and then chop up film because I was the video coordinator as a grad assistant, like after that, and then I would just rinse and repeat. And getting into college basketball and just kind of seeing the landscape at that time, this is back in 2010, it's just like, man, there's a lot of layers that you have to go through. And for me, it was like the pay that's associated with that. Like at that point, I mean, I was an unpaid grad assistant, and then, I'm going into debt with my MBA and getting my master's, and the running the summer basketball camp for the kids, the little boys in the community. I mean, that gave you, a couple $1,000s, maybe $3,000, like if you ran it right. But that's just a small dent overall. And I'm like, man, this is going to be a grind to make it in this field. And I got my undergraduate in business, I got my master's in business, and I just saw all these different layers to business, and I saw all these different, examples. And so I eventually made the decision, like, I don't think I want to coach college basketball. And then I got a 9 to 5 up in Humboldt County while my wife was getting her, then girlfriend was getting her teaching credential, and so she was there, and it's like, all right, we're going to be here. What am I going to do? Fortunately, I got picked up by one of the best employers up there in Humboldt County and worked for a general contractor and builder, and they've got like 8, 9 different companies, and one of their businesses is an AAU basketball team. It's a nonprofit. It's called the Humboldt Wild. And so I was able to be like the executive director over that. I was also a coach. My wife also coached a couple of teams, but that's the 4th grade boys and girls from, 4th and 5th grade all the way on up to seniors in high school. And it was a legitimate nonprofit organization where we had board meetings, we had to document what we were doing, we had to present our budget, we had to go and fundraise, and the owner of this nonprofit, the one who started it all, his name's Dan Johnson. He runs the Danco group of companies, which has multiple companies. He was very hands-on with me on, managing the budget, communicating in these board meetings, letting the parents know ahead of time. I'd have to call the hotels and book the hotel rooms. Had to communicate with the parents, and so that was one aspect where it's like the game is one thing, the game of basketball and coaching these kids and practice is one thing. He unveiled the business side of things and being able to prioritize different tasks, and like kind of lingo that he has is, is it high leverage, is it medium leverage, is it low leverage, like where does it stand as far as like this action item that you need to accomplish. And so it was a very much a hands-on, I guess, baptism to corporate America from someone who at that time I'd have been in business for 24, 25 years running his own company. And at that time, I think he probably had about 125, 150 employees. And for him to spend his time with me to coach me up, I thought that was very valuable. And so I learned a lot about business at that point, and I learned a lot about leadership from him. And I was like, well, this is great. And so I basically, after my wife and I made the decision to leave Humboldt County, I have identified leaders after that. Like, who do I want to work for, at these organizations? And what do I see from leadership standpoint? And so I eventually got into staffing and recruiting, and I realized that there was it really fit my strengths as far as helping people find jobs. So, people call them recruiters, talent acquisition managers, talent acquisition specialists, whatever it may be, that middle person from being able to get information from a hiring manager, like, hey, can you please find me this person, to going and actually finding that person. There's a lot that goes into that. And because I feel like one of my strengths is communication and being organized and developing relationships, like I really enjoyed that role of being an account manager, working with the recruiters, like to, hey, how is it going with that search? Have you been able to find that person? And then the recruiters would say, no, the budget is too low, or, I've been able to find people that have this, but they don't have that. And the manager said that they really want that. And so I would go back to the manager and say, hey, Mrs. Manager, we've been able to find, a person that has this, but not that. Really, really great people. Would you consider, interviewing those people still? And I feel like the way I would deliver that message eventually got them to say yes. And then, more often than not, it would work out, and they would get the job, and it would be a successful placement. And so contingency recruiting, I say, is like kind of the bulk of my 12 years in the business world. And I've worked at big time publicly traded global staffing organizations, to mid-sized 500, 600 employee organizations, to boutique about 15, 16 employees, to having my own agency where I had like 4 employees at one time. And there's just so many layers to being able to find people, and so many costs that are associated with it, that that's just kind of been the core of my 12 years. And then just recently, like as of a little over 2 months ago, I've accepted a position as a human resources director. So now I get to see kind of a totally different aspect of the business, and being able to understand compliance, benefits, employee relations internally. And then I still am in charge of recruiting and finding people. And so that's fine as well. But it's been great. And I work for a local nonprofit. We help out foster kids in the community, and so it's purposeful work. And I'm just really happy that I'm in the position I'm in right now, because I've been talking to so many HR directors throughout my career, and now to finally be in that seat, it's like, all right, like let's see how it works from this perspective. And I feel that the learning on my end, and the kind of the learning, just juices that comes into being able to, like, why am I doing this? Why is this important? Oh, this is the reason why. Um, and so, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now is I do human resources and I do community outreach for this local nonprofit.
Dang, that's cool. I'm transitioning more towards the business side as I look to like life after the military. I'm actually thinking about randomly starting a nonprofit here within the next few years with a buddy here in town. It's we're we're coming up with this concept of like similar to like a Boy Scout method, but for fathers and sons, to like establish more of this like relationship of father figures, like building those bonds. And so we want to create like this father son version of Boy Scouts, but doing hard things, physical fitness, building those relationships. And so we were talking about like creating like a community, where we weekly meet up, and we do events. And so it's diving down. It's crazy adventure that we're looking at. But
That's exciting. I can't wait for you to launch that.
yeah. And then you talked about it before where it's like, we just go do it, right? Like now that I've thought about it, I'm like, dude, why don't I just like go on, go start it, same as like when we're talking about why did I start a podcast or why do I get up this early or things like that. But let's talk about some leadership stuff. So you were talking about before when you read my philosophy and some other things, there was shocking or some new things. Which one stood out to you, man? Like, what have you heard before? Do you have any questions on them? Like, we got a couple of good little minutes now where we can throw in some leadership stuff.
Yeah, no. So the ones that I highlighted are, meet new people. And so like, I'll just kind of go through the ones that I put in bold. And so meeting new people, one of the things that, I find fascinating is that I may talk to a person just once, like ever, because I'm talking about a job and, we may get 10 minutes into the conversation and they may say, you know what, this job just isn't for me. And, so all right, well, what is for you? I mean, we've already spent this enough time, like I might as well just jot some notes down and see what it is that you want to do. And I feel like I'm a natural networker. Like I can connect people, and the way my brain works is like if I get like a random fact from somebody, it just gets placed somewhere back there, and then all of a sudden like it gets brought up. Like, hey, do you know somebody who does X, Y, and Z? I'm like, actually, yeah, I do. And so that's I feel like meeting new people and just going into the conversation, and specifically when I'm recruiting them for a specific job, and I'm asking them if they're interested or not. Like the approach that I have now after doing this for, over a decade is like getting into what matters most to them, like who they are, where they're at in life. And I mean, there's certain questions that you cannot ask. It can get kind of given the California labor laws, but I mean, there's open-ended questions that you can ask, and sometimes they will disclose personal information to where they'll tell you like, hey, I have a family, I have kids, it matters to me that I'm close, within a proximity, or I really want to get into a management role or whatever it may be. And so just going into that conversation, knowing that if this is the one and only time I'm going to talk to this person, like how do I want them to remember me by? And one of my standard practices that I do is when I talk to someone, if they have a LinkedIn profile, I will send them a LinkedIn connection right away. Like, and then next thing you know, we're connected, and it could be years down the road. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, I remember talking to you back in, 2014, could you help my friend out who, is interested in a company like yours? And then more often than not, because of that one conversation, they're like, yeah, I would. And so you don't have a second chance at a first impression. And, I'm a big believer in that. So whenever you meet somebody new, look them in the eyes, nice firm handshake. I talk to my boys about that because it's so important that it's kind of whatever you do when you meet new people and how you present yourself. And then for our kids with their sloppy hair for school, hey, you're either going to wear a hat or you're going to do your hair, because you're representing our family, and that's sloppy. And so that's one that I highlighted is meet new people. Before I get into like some of the other ones, do you have any like comments on that as far as meeting new people?
Yeah, so my meeting new people it's shifted. You covered a couple of the things already. Like I want to meet new people because there's a twofold too, right? There is a business side to it because since I do work in the health and wellness like world of like losing weight and doing stuff like that, it's always great to meet new people because if they are going through their life and something happens, they're like, oh, I need to get in shape. They can be like, oh, I remember meeting Manny. It's hard to miss me in a mustache first form shirt. I'll reach out to him. Maybe he can help me track my macros. Like, there's that side of it. But I also love it because I don't know, it's just great to meet. Like, I had a discussion with an airman here on base, and the military makes up 1% of the U.S. population. So in the military, if you only know military people, you only know hypothetically less than 1% of the people in your community.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, for me to go out and just go to the local gym and say hi to go to the grocery store and use the person's name when I'm checking out, start a conversation there, or go to my kid's school and meet some of the dads there. I've taken it on as just like, it's just fun. It's cool. Like, plus I love it when my kids get to see me meet new people, because then I can express to them the importance of it, where if I'm telling them to go meet new friends in a new school, but I don't meet new people when I go somewhere, how's that leading by example? It sort of ties back in there. But I think I'm just a social guy overall. So, like, my wife hates probably going to the gym with me or grocery store because I spend an extra 20, 30 minutes talking to people. But it's definitely switched. I don't know. And I threw it out there because some people don't realize it as a leadership trait. As far as meeting new people and having that confrontational side of who you are is a leadership trait. Some people may call it extrovert, but introverts can meet new people because it's not hard for an introvert to go, hey, Susie, thanks for bagging my groceries today. I'll see you next time. Boom. Like, that is as simple as a conversation can be. Because the next time you come in that store, maybe Susie says to you, hey, Efren, thanks. Hey, it's you again, Efren. Good to see you. Like, that starts a conversation.
And I love that you have that perspective. And, we talk to our sons about, you're a hero, thank you for your service. And the same thing for, it's the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, like the Coast Guard, the firefighters, the police officers. These are our heroes. These are the people that take care of us. And so, like, having that mindset with them, so when they do see those people, like, I want them to have an appreciation for the 1%ers here in our country. And then on the flip side, to be able to mesh the two, I feel like that's important as well. So if you get out and talk to the civilian population, just kind of like, I feel like that's important as well. And so, I mean, it's and then what you mentioned about being an introvert versus an extrovert, I have a buddy from church who he says, like, I'm an introvert, but I understand the importance of me, like, communicating with people. And so it's just unique that some people can be, but if you have that self-awareness, just like, hey, how are you doing, carrying a little conversation, even though you're an introvert and you'd rather do something to yourself, like, that value that you get from that relationship to kind of get out of your comfort zone. I mean, the relationship can just blossom into something nice. And so I'm like you, man. My wife, I'm a social person. I'll carry a conversation with anyone, and my wife, she just keeps it pretty steady. So I'm right there with you, brother.
What's another one you got?
Control time. So everyone's busy. And so being able to control your time, make time, like, for this, for example, like, hey, do something else, move it around in a different area so that you can make time for this. And so that's control time. Another one that I've got, control what you can control. One of my friends, his name's Hardy Espria, we coached together when we were at Humboldt. You can control your effort and you can control your attitude. Those are a couple of things that he preached all the time. And I was like, yeah, that is beautiful. You can control your effort, you can control your attitude, and those are things that you are in control of. No is not an answer. So, I mean, I've been a yes man a lot, and this is one of the habits actually my wife, when she was my girlfriend, just coached me on this. I used to tell people all the time, like, yeah, I'll be there, yeah, I'll see you there, and I wouldn't show up, And so she told me back then, she's like, hey, you can't do that, and these are the reasons why. And I'm like, you're right, and so I got better at that, late teens, early 20s, to just say, hey, thanks for the invite, I'm not going to be able to make it. And so, and now it's gotten to the point where it's just like, no, I will not be there. An RSVP comes in like right away, hey, can we make it? Can we not make it? No, we can't make it. So that's another one that I highlighted. Any ones on those that you have comments on? Control time, control what you can control, or no is not
Yeah,
an answer?
so I pride myself in having a pretty good schedule on my time. A lot of people see it on my social media. We talked about it before. Like I wake up the same time every day, 3:50. I roll out of bed. I make my pre-workout drink. I go to my couch. I read 10 to 15 minutes. I edit my podcasts, or I catch up on Netflix. Like that, I do that during that time. I get my time there with shows, and then I'm planning my workout. I do what I got to do there. I go to the gym for an hour. I come back home. I prep our kids' lunches, my lunches. I make breakfast every morning. I change at the same time. I shower at the same time. I get to work. It sort of all ties into habits. But when I tie it into control your time, if you don't control your time and you're trying to make time, you're never going to make it, right? So you have to have a purpose for making time. A lot of people talk about not having the time or not having enough time, but you got to control the time you have. Like, honestly, if you have 5 minutes, you better make those the best dang 5 minutes of your life. If you have 30 minutes, what are you doing with those 30 minutes? I'm a huge fan of auditing your time too. So there's times throughout maybe the 6 months, I'll just write down 5-minute, 15-minute blocks of the day and write down what I'm doing during those 15-minute blocks and evaluate it and go, is this when I should brush my teeth? Or is this when I should is this where I should place my shampoo to save me a couple? Like there are times like that where like I put my shampoo in a certain spot so where I know if I'm in a hurry one morning, it's going to save me time there to get it, put it on my face, do my hair, shave. Okay, I know that takes like 2 minutes, maybe at the most 2 minutes.
Yep.
But that's from auditing my day. Like, is there a reason why I don't lay my clothes out in the night and I get them in the morning? Things like that, and so that's control your time. You need it to work for you.
Yeah, and similar to that, I both my my current employer and then my previous employer, I've told them like, hey, like as soon as 5 o'clock hits, if there's nothing urgent or pressing for me to knock out, like I'm gonna head home because I want to play with my kids. And so they were, both the employers have been respectful about that ask, and so that's been something that like that's the time that I'm gonna carve out for them because by the time I get home to once we have to start having dinner and then our bedtime routine, whatever it may be, that is gold to me, that time. And so being able to get myself in position for that, you know, I would exercise. You get your workout in by yourself when everyone's asleep. Like that is something that you do. I do the dishes like after my wife goes to bed at night because
Yeah.
she needs her rest and that's important. It's just like leave that there. I'll knock it out afterwards, and then I'll catch up on my stuff. I'll put the headphones in, do the dishes while I'm watching something on YouTube or whatever it may be. But then also to like what you were saying, like from the brushing your teeth and that amount of time that it takes, the one of the things that I do is I will wear flip-flops into my car on my heading to work, but I will take my work shoes with me, and at stoplights I will put them on. I'll put my socks and my shoes on at different stoplights. And so those will be because that 30 seconds, to a minute, whatever it is to put on your socks and shoes, I could save that by just hopping in the car and going. And so if I have the opportunity to be able to do, two things at once, like I will do it. And so that's a big thing for me. Sporting events, like if there's something that I really want to watch, I just, I'll put in my headphones and I'll mow the lawn, and I'll just be listening to it, and so things along those lines to where maximizing the time, because what matters to me most is spending quality time with my family and doing whatever we can do together.
Yeah, and then control you control is a huge one because obviously since I'm so big on my nutrition and exercise, like you literally, and I'll tell a lot of my clients, like they're like, oh, the weight's not coming off. I'm like, you literally control what you put in your mouth. There is no excuse for weight loss or weight gain. There's nobody forcing you to put food. You control what you control, right? Like,
yep.
Boom, easy as nut. And they're like, oh, well, it's hard for me to track my food. I'm like, you control what you put in your phone to see where, and for some people, it lights a switch on them and they're like, dang, there's nothing more honest than you control. But it also helps on the flip side where if somebody is stressed out about something that happened or they don't know how to plan for it, I'm like, don't worry. Just control what you control. If you know you're going to a meeting today at 9, but you don't know what to expect during the meeting, just get to the meeting at 9. You can control that, right?
Yep.
If something happens during the meeting, don't stress out about it. You can't control that. It's going to suck, but focus on the little things.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. All right. Another one that I highlighted is punish in private, praise in public. And this is something that I highlighted because my wife's aunt that lives near us here, she emphasizes that, and that's been something that's like, you know what, that really does resonate well. And then now being in the position, and being our human resources leader, like there's
Oh, yeah.
roughly 85 people that I feel like I am responsible for their well-being. It could be, there's nothing that's too small that they need like an ear for. And so having those private conversations is important, I feel like. And then, like, I mean, this, that and I hope that you felt this, and making an assist in basketball to me was very satisfying. Like I would really feel like so much joy in seeing somebody else score the ball. And so, like, I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's just like internal, if it's different or whatever it may be, but praising in public and then being able to say, hey, how about that, that game that, Jose Luis Marquez had when he just knocked down, 3 3-pointers or whatever it may be. That was awesome. And so I find a lot of joy in recognizing other people. I feel like we've all got a lot going on, and I'm more of like, glass half full, optimistic, than I am, like negative Ned, and just complaining about stuff. And so I feel like that, it's something that really resonates with me as far as that punish in private, praise in public.
Yeah, I've just read and seen the human body is in need of appreciation, right? There's the psychologically, that's just how we're built. We're built off of praise and recognition to do things and keep doing them. So like to not do that is going against human nature, sort of, and the military's not good at it. The military's not good at praising in public. And so I make a credit for it, when I'm in an office or somewhere, I just read the High Five Habit book, by Mel Robbins, which talks about the effects of like a physical high five,
Yeah.
the contact, the touching, even if it's just yelling across the office, like, hey, Scott, nice job today. Those little things, I've seen it go a long way. So I try to at least implement it whenever I can, especially with my kids, like when I go to, it's like, I always read to my son at night and my wife reads my daughter. So when I read to my son at night, that's sort of like my punish in private time, where I'm not punishing, but I'm asking him, hey, what did you do bad today? Or if something bad did happen, I'll talk to him about it there when he's a little more comfortable and open, and he'll sort of like, yeah, I know, instead of like in the living room or out in front of his friends. Usually at nighttime is like our recap of the day, where if something comes up, we'll talk about it. Yeah.
I love that. Recapping the day, and then earlier what you said about auditing your time. Those are takeaways I'm going to have from this, man.
All right. Let's hear a memory of us from high school, man. What do you got off the top of your head? I got a couple, obviously, since I've been planning it, but what sticks out to you?
Oh man, so I would say my favorite memory is, and I'm not going to talk about our least favorite memory because that between you and I, because when you mentioned your broken thumb earlier and me being responsible for that, yeah, I'm so sorry to this very day. I'm so sorry for that. You can tell that story if you want. I'm not telling it. But my favorite story is going back to your hometown of Corning, and we were juniors, and for some reason they left you open, and you were so wide open. And I mean, how many catches did you have that game? I really don't know. Do you remember how many catches you had that game?
No, but I was playing tight end, which is what was crazy. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
But I was playing tight end that year, and I look back at how small or big I was. Like, what am I doing playing tight end at high school at this level?
Yeah, about buck 62. Yeah, no, exactly. But I mean, we flexed you out as a tight end. I don't think you had your hand on the ground.
There were some. Yeah.
We flexed you out, but regardless, I mean, you were either the second or the third receiver on the route tree, and you were just so wide open, and it was in front of your home crowd.
Yeah, I think it was an out. I'm pretty sure it was an out, and I think you were rolling. I think. But...
Yeah, no, it was like we had our play calls. Baltimore is it called? The
Baltimore.
Baltimore Raven.
That's I remember. Yeah, I remember
All
Baltimore. Yeah,
all the professional teams were
Baltimore, Green Bay were a
passes.
couple. I still remember the routes for some of those too.
All the college teams were run plays. And then you'll remember this. Remember J.R. Hinkle and when we played
Yeah,
Orville and how he told all of his teammates like, hey, if they say a professional team, it's going to be a pass. If they say a run,
because I
or if they
guarded him that
yeah
game.
yeah if they say it's a college team, it's a run. I remember getting to the line of scrimmage and I called out like Green Bay North 6, Green Bay. They're like it's a pass, and now I look and I'm like man, and it was pretty early on. I was like in the first quarter, I'm like check Packer South too, and it was the exact same play. But I was just like, I thought in the moment that I was being slick, and they're like, wait a minute, he just said Packer. Is that different? Is this a run now? Like, because I'm like, check. We were running the exact same play. But I would say you catching 6 or 7 passes, in Corning and winning that game, most importantly, is definitely my favorite memory. And then outside of that, man, I feel like you came in your freshman year and you just fit right in, like, as if you were with us forever. I mean, that's where, the constant of Gridley being my hometown from kindergarten to senior year, like I appreciate it so much more now looking back on it when there's so many kids that can go from school to school. And so, I would say the Corning game, you're just great attitude. And then, we talked about this before we started recording. I mean, the consistency that you had, at the varsity level with going to the weight room at 5-ish something in the morning, and you were the number one like guy that was always there, always working hard, always getting stronger. And then what I respected about you is that you stayed the course, and then you just passed people up that may have athletically been more athletic, but you knew what you were doing. You were strong. You were reliable. So those are all things that I would say that are my favorite things about you.
Nice. Yeah, I think for me it's just having you there because it was cool to walk into a new place and have the guy that had the experience, that knew the people, and wasn't like, oh, another new person. Like my whole high school, heck, not even my high school, my whole life, man. Like I've had you there as somebody to talk to. Like high school. It was great to have that thing I see in movies of the wide receiver quarterback friendship relationship. Like you watch Varsity Blues, and you see that, and I'm like, it was cool to be like, man, I had that with Efren, man. Like
That's
we
right.
had the route running by ourselves all the time. We brought and I loved how we brought the smarts to football. Like I just being able to talk to somebody at that time about the ins and outs of, because we both played both ways. I think in high school, we understood both sides of the game, and playing all the sports with you was cool. And you were talking about doing wrestling, so. Crazy story. My freshman year in high school in Corning, all my cousins were good athletes at football. I even went to a camp to play quarterback my freshman year of football in high school. But after that camp, I told my dad I didn't want to play football. And he
Oh,
was like, whoa, you have to play a sport at least. And so I did cross country. Hated it, but I didn't quit.
nice.
I ran with the girls my freshman year of cross country high school because I just wasn't good. So I ran with the girls cross country team. But I ran the whole year
Yeah.
of cross country. So that when you brought up the wrestling, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool because I was sort of the same. And I do remember like sophomore year being quarterback for the team, throwing a pick six my first game, and then never playing again. So I think Sander came in after me and played quarterback.
Yeah, no, and that's where it's just like so when I first started playing Pop Warner around, I want to say 10, 11, I was an offensive tackle and a defensive end. And so those are my positions when I first started, and I didn't know what I was doing. And the coaches didn't know me at that time either. And I was just having this conversation with Coach Ernie Haro, who, we both know well, and
Yeah,
Jessica was in our grade. And so he coached us, and me specifically as a as a Pop Warner kid, he coached me like at that time too. So he's one of my favorite coaches also. But and just looking back, he talked about how when I was playing offensive tackle and defensive end, it got to, we're in the middle of the season. They were kind of like, this guy could probably do something else. And then, besides this, he could probably bring some more stuff to the table. And then, so my second year of Pop Warner is kind of when I got into that quarterback role. And Frank Hall was our head coach, and he was just like a super nice man. His grandson Daniel, Letterman. David Letterman. No, that's the talk show guy. But he coached his grandson who was on our team, and he was like the nicest guy ever. He was so joyful, and then we had a bunch of other dads of our teammates that were, Garrett Mattis's dad and Dustin Mattis, because he was a little heavier. Back in those days with the weight, like he was young, he had to be pulled up because of his weight, and so he played with us, Garrett and Dustin, and so I mean it was fun times, man.
Yeah, and I will bring up the memory that changed my life forever. It was a pivotal moment in my life.
We can't
So
we can't leave everybody in suspense. Are you gonna tell it, or do I have to tell it?
yeah, I'm gonna say. So when my only broken bone my whole life, for anybody out there listening, is bowling. Senior year, yeah, it was a senior year right before baseball season. We were just out in Chico, doing I think it was a Friday night bowl. I go to bowl a ball, and a great guy behind me just chucks the bowling ball, and it hits my hand, breaks my thumb, and dislocates my middle finger. And I remember going to the hospital that night. I think we just drove there because obviously we lived 30 minutes from Gridley. My middle finger was one way. My thumb was all swollen. It leads to me being the scorekeeper for our high school senior baseball team that year. But it's crazy because like where would like that was probably the sport where I would have went to college and tried out. Because I really like baseball. I was decent at it, so it's crazy to see how that all happened. And where it all led. But I remember going to Cancun that year with the cast on with Garrett, and trying to tell crazy stories about how I broke my thumb and.
Yeah.
Oh
Again,
man.
I'm sorry. That was definitely one of the biggest regrets. And I
Oh,
remember when you were getting back to bowl, you had the bowling ball up, and then as you were
yeah.
coming down, I thought it would be funny or cool or something, and then I ended up, hurting you, and then you didn't get a chance to participate in our senior baseball season, which it was the first time in like 63 years that we won a
Yeah.
league title. And yeah, you were a part of it. You were a designated runner, but it would have been different. And so yeah, man, I learning from those moments, and just like, hey, I mean, now at this point, all I could do is just pass it forward to the kids that I coach and my sons.
Yeah. Well, nice. Do you have a book to bring to the table?
Yeah, so I've got The Millionaire Next Door. Have you
I
seen this one?
haven't.
Okay, so The Millionaire Next Door. This was my wife's uncle. He's a businessman in Orange County, and just being my wife really since we were 18 and going to see and getting to know her family around 19, 20 years young. He has recommended numerous books, and this is one of them where we went on our honeymoon. I read it, um, and it basically talks about living under your means, and how they could just be a neighborhood, and a tract neighborhood where it doesn't look like there's people with a bunch of wealth in home C or J or whatever it may be, but they've done a good job of managing their finances, and not charge too much on that credit card. And so it really does, it gave me a foundation, because I mean the worst thing that happened to me financially, like the first go around, like when I was in college, is I was given a $6,000 credit limit, um, and I thought I was rich, and I was just like, oh yeah, look at this credit card, I got 6,000, and then I realized, like, whoa, what is this thing called interest that I got to pay back? And so that was a lesson that I learned there. And then I feel like my wife and I, since we've been married, we've done a good job of managing our finances. And then we had our medical emergency with our son Jude, and so really we lost it all, man. Like all of our savings. I mean, like we really had depleted it, and so we're building back on up present day on and the principles of kind of the millionaire next door, on just living underneath your means, really having a good idea of your finances. If you have the ability to buy a used car, I mean that's one of the core things that he emphasized in there. Buy a used car. You buy one off the lot. As soon as you drive it off the lot, it goes down in value, 7 to 10,000 or whatever it may be. As soon as you drive it off, was it really worth it? But it's all circumstantial, depending on different people's finances. times in present day with inflation being as high as it is and cost of living and there's so many factors, like it's not, like it doesn't apply to everyone, but that's just one that stood out to me is The Millionaire Next Door.
Nice. Yeah, I'll drop in the High Five Habits that I mentioned just because I haven't mentioned it yet. It's a good book. I love it. She does a great job talking about just the impact of a small movement every day can have on your life. And she talks about it. You do it to yourself in the mirror is what she does. And so she talks about adding that in the morning. But I love it because she also talks about habits in general, how to do things to stack. She talks about making your bed, easy wins, stacking up those wins. So the High Five Habits, but I think it's Mel Brooks was her name.
Mel Robbins.
Yeah.
I follow her on TikTok.
Mel Robbins.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's great on TikTok. That High Five, I've done it before. And
So I didn't realize how new it was because I got the book from a thrift store, so I thought it was like an old book. And then I was reading it, and she shows like Instagram, and I was like, oh, it's got to be pretty read. Then she talks about COVID during it, and I'm like, man, when did this book must have like just came out? So I was like, oh, that's pretty cool.
You got a good one.
So
Yeah, she's awesome.
All right, man. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, man. Love you, brother. Thanks for having me on my first ever podcast.
Yeah, and then I'll reach out to you for, like your LinkedIn and stuff like that. And we'll put those in the show notes in case people have questions for you and want to reach out as well. But yeah, for those listening, just like I say every time, if you didn't take notes, I'll be mad. I got my page of notes. We learned something. We talked. We laughed. Almost cried. It was great. Until next time, Efren, my man.
All right, brother. Thank you.
Take it easy, bro.